We had to struggle with the old enemies of peace, business and financial monopoly, speculation, reckless banking, class antagonism, sectionalism, war profiteering. They had begun to consider the government of the United States as a mere appendage to their own affairs. And we know now that government by organized money is just as dangerous as government by organized mob. Never before in all our history have these forces been so united against one candidate as they stand today. They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
And this is Politics by Jake. Welcome to the show. Now, I wanted to start the show off with this. It's something that I only obliquely referred to in the last show when I talked about how Trump wants to create a state of emergency. But I want to speak more to an aspect of it now, and there will probably be other updates and comments I will make on this, but it's something that I've noticed, and it's something that I feel that I want to tell you and that you, my listeners, need to hear. So I want to say this. I want to open the show with this. Among other things, right wing, and really, although it'd technically be correct to say that these commentators are to the right, calling them merely right-wing gives a patina of reasoned normalcy that, in my opinion, they do not deserve. Sure, you can say they don't believe or propose like you do, but just right-wing. But I'm telling you, they're either fascist or for their own reasons, whether it be money, be it fame, be it power, they're espousing fascism. And I've told you why. I've explained on this show multiple times, and I'll keep doing it. Fascism, at its most elemental, is control of the means of production by corporate or private interests. Remember, this was Roosevelt's definition, and it's a true definition. And it is reactionary beliefs, such as that women should not vote, that the vote should be taken away from women, or that chattel slavery was actually okay. You positively, absolutely hear such things from these persons. These are backward, bygone beliefs, and when you are a fascist, you are possessed of such beliefs. And you further, and this is key, you support and uphold violence as a means of promoting them and bringing them to pass. That is fascism. And since Charlie Kirk was killed, much has been made of the hate, accusing the left of hate, because people like me in the media call them fascist. And is this not proof, they say, among other things, of the depredation and the evil intention of the left to call a legitimate political philosophy, and of course they grace themselves with this. They do not say it. They do not say we are politically legitimate, but that is the implication. How dare we on the left, or even to the left of Genghis Khan, how dare we engage in such things? Surely we are the murderers. This is what they say. The outlets are full of this these days. And they're full of it for several reasons. One of them, as I say, is because of Epstein. Another is because of the desire of the overarching desire of Trump and his fascist cabal to create a state of emergency so that they can invade cities, so that they can take away local government, so they can federalize the troops, so they can reign in the streets with blood and with horror. As I say, you absolutely positively hear such things from such persons. All you have to do is go on the media outlets and you will hear it. These are backwards, these are bygone beliefs, and when you are a fascist, you are possessed of such beliefs. And you further, and this is key, you support and uphold violence as a means of promoting them and bringing them to pass. Recently, I was advised of a person, a commentator like myself, who thinks that there should be public executions and that children above the age of 12 should be forced to watch. This is fascist. This is violence. This is the support of state-sponsored violence, the justification of the things which they themselves secretly hope and promulgate and prosecute by ways and means, by their messages in the media. And yet another says this, that the death penalty should be expanded, and it should include anyone who criticizes or opposes Donald Trump. This is madness. This is fascism. And as I say, much has been made since Charlie Kirk was killed of the hate, accusing the left of hate, because people like me in the media do call them fascist. So now, my listeners, I say to you, make no mistake. When someone is possessed of the beliefs of which I have just spoken, they are in very definition fascist. And make no mistake when I tell you that fascism is so dangerous, it is so threatening to our democratic republic, that I feel quite willing to utter again what you have also heard me say before, that because of this, there should be no fairness for fascists. Now, legality? Yes, for sure. Give them legality. But fairness, and to them, fairness is not calling them what they really are. That's what fairness is to them, so that they continue their work silently and without fear of reproval, without fear of exposure, without fear of being called out. That's why you hear their propaganda media outlets saying these things now and raging. Because, you never let a good crisis go to waste. And that's what they're doing now. They're making hay off of the cold, dead body of Charlie Kirk. This has always been in their mind. And it is proof of their sensibilities and their own self-awareness about what it is that they do. So, what more are we to say about this? Don't be fooled. I know. We in the alternative media know. We who say these things, we know whereof we speak. We are not mere refugees from some campy, happy movie like The Big Lebowski, where the hero protagonists called authoritarian types fascists, and everyone laughs. Oh, so funny. This hippie who is stuck in the 60s. Oh, we laugh. We know whereof we speak. And it is therefore that we do speak, in order to warn you of this great, great danger. And this is Politics by Jake. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Let's be blunt, shall we? America is litigious. It's unstable, and it's financially weaponized. If your name is on everything you own, you're a sitting duck. At Twain Consulting, we help you vanish legally, ethically, and permanently. From land trusts to layered LLCs, we teach you how to restructure your assets so the predators can't see them and can't touch them. This isn't a loophole. It's a strategy that the wealthy have used for decades. Isn't it time you got the same protection? Call Twain Consulting at 805-380-5699 or visit us online. Protect what's yours before someone else claims it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. This is Jake, here to tell you the world is on fire, only you're not being told who actually lit the match. Politics by Jake, Mondays and Fridays at 7 a.m. on KCAA. All right, and this is Politics by Jake, and we're back, and I didn't do the normal opening of the show, so I guess I'll kind of backtrack and do that now. With Politics by Jake, we try to do, is to bring you a bi-weekly summary, Mondays and Fridays, 7 a.m. on KCAA if you're listening in eastern Los Angeles County or San Bernardino County, or actually Riverside as well. An overview, kind of a synthesis of world events, but I usually am only able to get to like 2 or 3 or 4 at most, and it's a study. It's an ongoing study of the world historical process, the big picture, the world historical impact. That really is the stock and trade of Politics by Jake. And of course, we try to make suggestions also, whether explicit or implicit, on what you, the listener, can do, no matter who you are or where you are in this world. Ways that you can improve the quality of the world historical process, because we believe that, and God knows it needs improvement. And of course, we're on KCAA. Go to kcaradio.com and you can see me there. Just type in the Monday or Friday schedule. You don't even have to type it, you just click on it. And I'll pull up. I'm on right after Stephanie Miller, and you can see that. And you can also listen to me. You can either listen to the live stream or you can listen to the podcast. You can download that and listen to it whenever you want. So that's basically the thing. And it's on FM 102.3 and 106.5. And it's also on 1050 and I think 1060 AM. I think it's 1050 AM. So we're on that. And that gives for you local listeners the opportunity to do that. And for the rest of you, thanks to digital technology, you can just listen to the podcast. So, okay. Now, one of the segments that we try to do every show, is the Kakistocracy Corner. And that's a strange word. That's a weird word, Cacistocracy. Kakistocracy Corner. And kakistocracy means government by the absolute most incompetent, most underqualified, the very worst people. And I suppose I would call this statement the fight of the states against kakistotic crazies. Holy alliteration. Kakistocracy Corner, kakistocratic crazies in health and human services. And yes, that's right. We're going to be talking about RFK Jr. again. Not that there certainly aren't others to talk about. Kristi Noem, Carolyn Levitt, Pam Bondi, Stephen Miller. There's just a whole bunch of them. Now, but we're going to go back to Bobby Kennedy here, because he's an issue. He's at issue. And in terms of resistance here, this is really important to share with you, because you're not hearing this. You're not getting this message. That's why Politics by Jake exists. Well, partly political education, but also to tell you the things and inform you about the things that others in the media, they won't tell you. And we have the question of, since Bobby Kennedy is claiming that, he's basically ordering you that, in effect, the COVID vaccine, and then God knows what other one's coming up, but the COVID vaccine, the new one, the fall of 2025 to the spring of 2026, targeting the specific forms of COVID, which are now prevalent. He says this, it's not recommended. The fact that it's not recommended doesn't mean you can't get it. Now, this is a lie, and he knows that it's a lie. In particular, because in many states, not recommended means you can't get it. That's not every state, but in many states, you can't get it. And in just about all the states so far, pending urgently needed legislation, if the COVID vaccine is not recommended, and this is why I say you can't get it, it means the insurance company will not pay. It probably means that Medicare will not pay. It probably means that Medicaid will not pay, that Obamacare may not pay, because it's not recommended. So it means that you will have to pay for it yourself. And God knows the difficulty of getting people to act in their enlightened self-interest, which I've talked to you before. The fascists are doing. Why don't you want to do that for yourself? And why don't we want to band together with like-minded people? One aspect of your enlightened self-interest is to get these medications in a timely way. Otherwise, we have all these cases. Back when COVID was a really bad thing, there were websites describing how the people that were loudest in their condemnation of the vaccine were the ones who were screaming, "It's not too late. I want the shot." And of course, these were the ones they already had one foot in the grave. I mean, it was too late. So you've got to think about that. Don't let that be you. But I know CVS has it. I think this applies to Pfizer. I'm not sure, but I think it does. But I think either immediately or soon you'll be able to get the Moderna version. You may be able to get the Novavax version for people who prefer that, although they're pretty much similar. So just for your information. But now, and we've talked on this show about Zohran Mamdani and the New York mayoralty election. You may remember of one of the achievements of Andrew Cuomo. And he is being castigated and just treated poorly in the media and by his fellows. Governor of New York, right? Everybody hates this guy. They're trying to hate this guy, trying to portray him as an awful person, the ultra-lefts especially. And we've talked about that, and, we will more. But right now, the corporate media loves the ultra-lefts. And I've talked about this before. And do you know why? Can you remember? It's because they lose. And the corporate media wants them to lose. But I say to you, remember this, all right? Back in that awful nightmare spring of 2020, when COVID was showing up everywhere and Trump was raving about shut down the testing because, and this was the reasoning, and it's absolutely positively crazy. It's crazy. So the reasoning is this: if we shut down the testing, we won't have the cases. He said this. I heard him say it. That's irrational. That's mystical subjectivism, okay? In other words, if I don't know about it, it means it doesn't exist. Well, it does exist. And it did exist. But Trump, who as I've told you, for years now, and others like me, he's crazy. He's crazy. He's mentally disturbed. He has a psychological condition. Go ask his niece, Mary. Go look up Bandy X. Lee. I know it's a strange name. Bandy, B-A-N-D-Y, Bandy. and then her middle initial is X, and her last name is Lee, Lee, Bandy X Lee. That's literally her name. She's, I think, a Yale psychologist or psychiatrist. Mary is also a certified psychologist. They'll tell you all about what is wrong with him. And there are things wrong with him. And they're not the only ones who know either, by the way. But he was out there with that. And then he was telling you, you should inject bleach. And I remember the doctors who were sitting there with these looks of dismay and horror on their faces because he said you should inject bleach or, get a very powerful lamp and shine that on yourself or into yourself or stick it where the sun don't shine or whatever it was, up your butt, down your pie hole, just wherever. In other words, this was absolute raving stuff. This was bonkers. It's not inspiring confidence because that's what Trump is. And as many have said, he's a moron. But Cuomo, who the ultra-lefts hate and who is running for election as mayor, what did he do then? And at this point, let's take another break and get the sponsors selling some stuff. And this is Politics by Jake, and we will be back with what Cuomo did. Okay? Be back in a moment. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Imagine, if you will, having the power to disappear from the prying eyes of creditors, identity thieves, nosy strangers, all while protecting what you've worked so hard to build. That's what virtual invisibility offers. It's not magic. It's smart legal and business strategy to shield your assets and privacy so you can live free, confident, and in control. Most people think that asset protection is only for the ultra-wealthy, but it's for anyone who wants peace of mind and financial security, including you. Don't wait until it's too late. Take control now. Call me at 213-465-0639 or go to facebook.com/Twain Consulting to learn how virtual invisibility can protect you and your family, because when you're invisible to risk, you're unstoppable. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake to tell you you're not crazy. The system is rigged. Help us say it louder, won't you? Join us at patreon.com/Politics by Jake. Okay, and this is Politics by Jake, and we are back. So, all right. So, we ended the previous segment. We were talking about Cuomo and why the ultra-lefts hate him. And why the corporate media really want Mamdani. Because it benefits the right. It benefits the fascist right. It benefits the Republicans, if you want to call them that. Conservatives, if you want to call them that. Reactionaries, if you want to call them that. It benefits them. It benefits the donor class, the oligarchs. So, Cuomo is running, for election too. What did he do? In this case, we have to remember the other thing that Cuomo did was to set up, and we remember Trump had said every state has to do this by themselves. And by the way, if you never had any evidence for what I say, that Trump is a con man, that he's a grifter, and that he's out for himself and nobody else, all that he looks at, all of us, is just marks. That's all he thinks we are. We're suckers, people to be taken. And Trump did this. He got all of these stocks of medical supplies. And he said, me and Kushner, his son-in-law, says, Don, we have these stocks of the COVID or other material, but those are ours. That's for the federal government. And the question obviously arose, so what are you going to do with it? Because the federal government is there to serve the states in a case like this. It's what the federal government does. But this was Trump. And it's amazing how quickly people forget. But this is what he said. He said, no, 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 no. Every state has to go and buy from us. They have to bid and buy for getting this equipment and the personal protective gear and the equipment and any kind of medicine. And that's all the states. And the idea was that he wanted that the states were bidding one against the other in a great big feast, a feeding frenzy. Everyone at the trough competing against each other while Trump and Kushner reaped the profits. That was the idea. And it was a terrible, cynical, cruel, divisive idea. There's your government for you. There's your Trumpist, your MAGA, cultish, fascist government. And it's what's there again now. And then they had some of these, I guess, pharmacy benefit managers in today's terms. They were organizing airlifts paid for by the United States Air Force to bring things in, which they would then sell to people who needed them. So this is what Cuomo did, and this is just really important. I don't care what you think about Cuomo. You have to look at the political realities, and you have to judge the actions that he took. And this is what he said. He said, let's have an alliance. And I believe he got New Jersey and Connecticut to come along with New York. And I think that some of this stuff was, if the crisis had gotten deeper and deeper, which it did, but not, it didn't go all the way into 2021. It was already at that time. The light was there at the end of the tunnel by December of 2020. We knew a vaccine was coming. There was a lot of excitement. But the idea of setting up these regional alliances, that was Cuomo's idea. So, okay, so who do we have? What do we have? And showing admirable leadership once again, we had Governor Pritzker of Illinois declaring to Trump, don't come to Chicago. Don't bring your ICE Gestapo fascist goon squad. And we have Newsom. And this is the kind of competition that will save the nation, by the way. And Newsom says this. Now get this, okay? He says, okay, we have California. We now have a 3-state alliance. We are the West Coast of the United States. We are the Western States Health Alliance, the Vaccine Alliance. And this is California and Oregon and Washington State. And we are going to develop their own standards, or speaking with them, our own standards. And they're going to be looking at the companies, the societies, the pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the American Pediatric Association, the American Public Health Association, the Heart Association, and others. And on the basis of those, I would recommend to them, and I would say, if you're doing that, take a look at Germany. Take a look at the British. Take a look at France. See what they're doing. There was actually some talk of that recently at the hearings. And they say, the U.S. establishment has run wild. They got all these shots into the 70s. Well, it turns out France and some other places in Europe, they have similar numbers. Not exactly the same. Ballpark figures, not that different. So they're going to do that. And then I would think if the states legislate, the states regulate insurance companies so they could say, you want to sell medical insurance in California? Pretty big market, right? California. So this is the pitch. You must, talking to the insurance companies, you must accept our California or Western Health Alliance, California, Oregon, Washington, our vaccine indications and our recommendations. And you've got to pay for those if you want to be in this state. Otherwise, the hell with you. We'll get somebody else, or we'll create one of our own. And since the idea of a state sector is no longer heresy, and honestly, to me, it never was. There's a place for a state sector. I've talked about it before. It's another show, but let's sit with that just as I have said it and not go further on it at this time. But just go with me on this. Thanks to Trump grabbing a piece of intel and his golden share of U.S. steel, which is exactly why you do not want a state sector. You want a state sector for certain things, but not for some grifter, not for some con man. All right? Because it's an invitation to grift and to graft and to con under the color of authority of the federal government. It's like strong arm tactics. It's like the federal government putting the arm on U.S. steel. You got it? So, all right. So that's where we are with that. So now this was like about a week ago or so on the internet. I was reading things that there are forces in Illinois who are saying, let's create a Midwestern Health Alliance. And that would be Illinois. It would be Michigan. It would be Minnesota and possibly others. Great. And then the Northeast, and I think this is quite interesting. They have already been consultations among the following to create something like a Northeast Health Alliance. So it would be, in other words, Vermont. It would be Maine. It would be Massachusetts. It would be Rhode Island. It would be Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York. And remember when I was talking about how our form of government is a hybrid form of government? This is the power of the hybrid that I was telling you about, that I told you a show or two ago. We don't have a democracy. We don't. And we don't have a republic either. That is wrong. We have a hybrid. We have a democratic republic. And hybrids, they have a much better chance of succeeding and surviving. So we have a democratic republic. And if you go to youtube.com/@politicsbyjake and look at the shorts, I have on there where I talk about the hybrid that we have. And it's playing pretty good. I encourage you to look at that, only a minute or so. Help pump the numbers. So this is what a hybrid gives you. If the federal government goes wacky, like it is now, hey, states' rights. The states and the governors of those states have power. And this includes economic power. So this is what's going on right now. And when I see stuff like this, it gives me hope. This, I think, is a souped up, extended version of what Cuomo was doing back in the spring of 2020. So these are the forces of science. Let's call it human reason, medical science, physicians, medicine and human survival. And then there are, of course, the dark side. The dark side is also not inactive. In the case of Florida, it's this guy Latipo, who is he's the Surgeon General of the state of Florida, who is an ideologue. He is someone, I don't think he has any respect for science. He's interested in ideology, and that is he has prospered personally as a result of this. And what he has done is to say Florida henceforth is going to attempt to abolish any vaccine mandates for school children. And this is mind-blowing. Look, vaccines work, okay? They work. And they save lives. And if you, RFK Jr., and your ilk, and your claque, and your cabal, whatever it is that you have, are going to come out and make these statements, I refer you to the maxim of law that says extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And in the absence of that, you can dispose of such whack job claims very clearly, like that vaccines don't work. That's the legal maxim, and it applies here, in my opinion. So, back to Florida. If you live in Florida, this is the time to consider repatriating back to the territory of one of these other alliances, either the Western, the Midwestern, the Northeastern Health Alliance. That's where you should be. It's going to make sure that you're going to get these things. They will make sure that you're going to get these things, because this could be the difference between life and death. And this, probably also helps on various kinds of women health issues and indeed other things. Florida wants to end the requirement, and that, I think, for a responsible parent, that's a very severe thing to deal with. And then, of course, if you're a tourist, man, you want to go to Florida, get out on the beach and be what? What you'll be dealing with. What can we say? I mean, you're going to be stewing in your own viral soup if you do that. So that's basically my take on that. Kakistocracy Corner actually went on for 2 segments. And now we'll take a break, and we'll be back, and this is Politics by Jake. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Let's be blunt, shall we? America is litigious. It's unstable, and it's financially weaponized. If your name is on everything you own, you're a sitting duck. At Twain Consulting, we help you vanish legally, ethically, and permanently. From land trusts to layered LLCs, we teach you how to restructure your assets so the predators can't see them and can't touch them. This isn't a loophole. It's a strategy that the wealthy have used for decades. Isn't it time you got the same protection? Call Twain Consulting at 805-380-5699 or visit us online. Protect what's yours before someone else claims it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake. Do you like what you hear right now? Support the real talk then. Go to patreon.com/Politics by Jake right now. Every dollar helps fight the noise. All right, hello, this is Politics by Jake, and we're back for yet another segment. We're going to keep going on this. I look at my notes and see the things that maybe I want to talk about, and I want to talk about it all. But we're going to keep going on this vaccines thing, and the Kakistocracy Corner. This may wind up being a show entirely about the Kakistocracy Corner, which, as you know, is government by the absolute positive worst people in the world. So let's go on with this. And then we have, and this has received at least more attention lately, the question of human reason as expressed through science, through technology, through medicine, and through industry, certainly technology, but in this context, especially medicine, especially vaccines, especially idea that immunizations in the United States and in the military forces actually goes back to George Washington, the Revolutionary War, that members of the Continental Army have to get a smallpox immunization, right? The Jenner technique that they were using, which was a comparatively primitive technique, that was here at the time for children, school children. This goes back to the 1850s. And again, smallpox is an excellent example. Smallpox has been wiped out. It has been annihilated. It has been obliterated. All those words that we like to use so much to speak in absolute. But now we're told, along comes this character who, as I've told you before, he's a heroin addict. Probably a cocaine addict too, but a 14-year heroin addict. He's written this himself. He admits this. And that he's suffering from the depredations of a brain worm. And he has decided that kids, hey, Politics by Jake, Mondays and Fridays, 7 a.m., Kakistocracy Corner. a 14-year heroin addict suffering the depredations of a brain worm as the head of the Department of Health and Human Services. Politics by Jake 70. Do you get this? Are you getting what I'm saying here? This is really bad. And he's decided that kids below a certain age don't need it. And most adults, he says, don't need it. And therefore, if you want it, if you live in about a dozen states, you're just not going to get it. Because you're going to have to prove that you have some special condition or make some special argument. It's a good reason not to live in Texas, not to live in Florida. And of course, in Florida, as I said in the last segment, we have this guy Latipo, who's there to tell you that no coercion can be imagined. And how can I tell you? Who am I to tell you what to put in your body? This is what he says. And of course, as Colbert pointed out, Stephen Colbert, that is what a medical doctor does. That's what they do. Here's a pill you should take. Here's the shot you should get. Here's the ointment that you should put, at least on the outside or whatever it is. So this is impossible. This is insane. It's irrational. It's the denial of very human reason. And of course, this is an attack on something very important. The United States is an optimistic country. You look at various kinds of historical writings, say from recent, maybe, 100 years ago, certainly in the 1920s, maybe before the war, and they will say, if you read them, well, the most pessimistic country is Russia because they have Tosca. And for those of you who don't know, Tosca is an opera in 3 acts written by Giacomo Puccini to an Italian libretto by Luigi Licca and Giuseppe Giocosa. In other words, they had this brooding, this melancholy, this pessimistic outlook towards the world. But then the most optimistic, they will say, is the American. And the American believes in science, believes in technology, believes in progress. And I want to ask you, how long since you heard progress? And I mean this sincerely. It's been quite a while. Postmodernists who infest a lot of our major universities, they don't like progress. They don't want to hear about progress because they know that's a cover story for racism, oppression, imperialism, and all the rest of that. So here we have an attack on the system. Our system is being attacked, and I think if you want to think of an impeachable crime, the impeachable effect that we need, here it is. Kennedy has wiped out $600 million of research into mRNA vaccines. And on what basis? Well, I guess it's because he doesn't like mRNA. Well, if we go back, the overwhelming majority of injections and immunizations which stopped the pandemic, it wasn't about injecting yourself with bleach or shining a light inside yourself. Those, some crazies tried that, and they believe me, they were not successful. And don't give me this story either about ivermectin, this horse paste, and my God, the other one, hydroxychloroquine. Don't bother me with this stuff. This is for the chuckleheads, the Mickeys, the mentally challenged. It was the 2 mRNA, the Pfizer one and the practically simultaneous Moderna one. If you had a germ warfare attack by China and Russia, those were the ones that stopped COVID. Those are the ones that stopped COVID cold. And if you had a germ warfare attack by China or Russia or North Korea or, some other well-wisher or admirer of the United States from around the world, and they decide that they want to avenge some, story that they've made up about the United States, and they decide that germ warfare, biological warfare, B weapons, ABC, this is the B. You're going to need mRNA right away because you're not going to be able to take 2 years to do that. You're going to have to do it in 2 months. Basically, get it going off of these assembly lines, 2 months. And I would say that you can certainly impeach RFK based on gross violations, gross negation of the needs of the United States national defense in the biological warfare area, because with him there are no reserves. There are no people left at the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, the NIH, the National Institute of Health. It's been decimated. So many research projects have been aborted. And then Health and Human Services in general. And we're waiting for new personnel, I guess, but you can see what this is. This has to end. So I would go back and say the optimism, which is typical of America most times, up until the middle of the 20th century, we can say, there's a little history for you. It's the influence of the philosopher Leibniz, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, greatest scientist, greatest mind of the last 500 years probably, invented the computer. There's actually one up in northern Germany. You can go see it. It's up there. The steam engine. I think you're going to see that Papin and others were leaning on Leibniz. Papin was a contemporary of Leibniz. So much of the modern world is Leibniz. And the fundamental point of view, which Voltaire could not stand, by the way, because Voltaire is, that's the phony Enlightenment. Voltaire is the pretend Enlightenment. I think, Congressman Raskin would do well to talk less about Voltaire, because he's the one who wrote Candide, and Candide is supposed to be an attack on Leibniz, the best of all possible worlds. It misses the mark. It's a failure. Leibniz is there to tell you that science, technology, human reason, religion, followed by medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, and then these implemented, realized and realized in the population. These things can improve the human condition. The human condition is not hopeless, but it can be improved. That's the great message to the world. That's Leibniz. And that's the building block of America. It's that. And this is Politics by Jake, and we'll be right back. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Imagine, if you will, having the power to disappear from the prying eyes of creditors, identity thieves, nosy strangers, all while protecting what you've worked so hard to build. That's what virtual invisibility offers. It's not magic. It's smart legal and business strategy to shield your assets and privacy so you can live free, confident, and in control. Most people think that asset protection is only for the ultra-wealthy, but it's for anyone who wants peace of mind and financial security, including you. Don't wait until it's too late. Take control now. Call me at 213-465-0639 or go to facebook.com/Twain Consulting to learn how virtual invisibility can protect you and your family, because when you're invisible to risk, you're unstoppable. Now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. This is Jake, here to tell you the world is on fire, only you're not being told who actually lit the match. Politics by Jake, Mondays and Fridays at 7 a.m. on KCAA. And this is Politics by Jake, and we're back. And I wanted to talk about this. I talked a little bit about, for fascism, there needs to be irrationalism. And I talked about that last week on the show. And I want to talk about that a little more so you can get an idea of it. Just kind of get an idea of what I'm referring to. Mysticism, irrationalism, it's part and parcel of things like fascism, things like Nazism, this irrationality. And look what you have. you have fascism running amok in America. What I'm telling you is that there's a connection here. And I just want to, in the time that's left on the show, try to give you an example of this. So that's probably enough to establish, I hope for you, that fascism is virtually impossible. And let me just give you an idea. Let me just give you a little idea of what this is. The Nazis loved opera. Hitler loved Wagner. And this Wagnerian opera is this great grab bag of irrationalism. So let's talk about a couple of the Wagner things. The plot of Der Fliegende Holländer, which is the Flying Dutchman. Wagner's fourth opera. It centers, just to give you an idea, this centers on a cursed sea captain doomed to sail the oceans forever unless he finds a woman who will remain faithful to him until death. And the story begins during a violent storm off the coast of Norway, where the Dutchman's ghost ship appears. And he's taken. He's taken in by the merchant de land, who offers him shelter in the hand of his daughter, whose name's Senta, in exchange for treasure. And Senta is already obsessed with the legend of the Dutchman through a painting that she saw. She vows to be his faithful wife, and she believes that her love can break the curse. And in the final act, when the Dutchman believes Senta has betrayed him, she throws herself into the sea to prove her eternal devotion. And she ultimately redeems him and allows both to be saved by love. So, in contrast, you have this vast 4-opera cycle called in German Der Ring des Nibelungen, which is the Ring of Nibelung. It presents a vast, as I said, mythological narrative, tracing the fate of a magical ring that grants power. Listen to me on this. I'm going to make a point here. That grants power, but brings destruction to its possessors. And the story begins with the Rhine maidens. They're guarding the Rhine gold, which Alberic, he's a character in the play, steals, or in the opera, after renouncing love, forging it into a ring that gives him dominion over the world. This act sets off a chain of events involving gods, giants, dwarfs, and heroes. And in De Valkyrie, which is the Valkyries, the god Wotan's, I'm telling you, this is what it is. The god Wotan's daughter, Brunhilde, disobeys him by protecting the mortal lovers Sigmund and Sigelinde, leading to her punishment of being stripped of her powers, placed in a deep sleep, guarded by the Ring of Fire. And the final opera, which is the Götterdämmerung, culminates in the destruction of the gods. The gods themselves are destroyed, and the ring's final fate, with Siegfried, the hero born of the forbidden love, ultimately meeting his end and the ring returning to the Rhine. So, okay. Does this remind you of anything particularly? How about maybe Lord of the Rings? That whole thing? One of the most popular stories in the history of the world, I dare say, and more current too. And see, if you know that, then a lot of what I just described, it's going to sound familiar to you, almost like it was lifted off a Wagner script, right? But that's, like I said, that's part and parcel of the things like fascism, like Nazism, this irrationality. And look, like I said, you have fascism running amok in America. So what I'm telling you is there's a connection here. So that's probably enough to establish, I hope, for you, just a brief little look into that, that fascism is virtually impossible without this tremendous dose of irrationality to make you into someone who's much more easy to gaslight and to lead around and to ultimately abuse. And that's all the time we have. That's the end of our show. And I will see you, God's willing, on Friday for another episode another installment of Politics by Jake. And I hope you have a good week, and we'll see you on Friday. Bye-bye.